I'm a servant to the people of Queensland and Australia, and in that capacity, I note that this bill is completely unnecessary. It's not needed. So here's why. If the government cut immigration, Australia's immigration intake, it would save the building of many. If the government cut Australia's immigration intake from just 10% from the current 1 million arrivals, it would save the building of many more houses than Labor claims this fund will build. Housing crisis lessened. More houses saved than Labor says it will build. Instead, we are here dealing with dirty deals done dirt cheap. Cheap for the Greens, yet taxpayers will be paying billions. As a servant to the people of Queensland and Australia, I note that the people of Australia are disgusted to look at this parliament and see the rotten horse trading and deal-making going on. The Greens hold themselves up on their high moral horse and virtue signal to the world that they are the pure ones while telling everyone what to do. In reality, they're down in the mud doing dirty deals like the rest of them. So what deal is it we have to look at today? The government is going to build and own houses. Not the people of Australia, the government. Full-blown communism delivered express to your door. As the infamous Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum has repeatedly already told the world, you will own nothing and you will be happy. The goal of the Greens and Labor to come into this chamber to preach out in the world that they're helping Australians, helping you. The Greens' rent caps have already led directly to faster rent increases because landlords understandably want to get ahead of the rent caps. The Greens are already hurting renters. The housing crisis is a problem the government created entirely. The government is now claiming to have the solution, and that's a fraud, Minister. The Albanese Labor government has allowed 1 million people to arrive in this country in just 1 year. 1 million people. 1 year. 460,000 in net migration, 540,000 student visas. Every single one of those needs a bed and a roof over their head, not to mention the additional 200,000 other visas, 1.2 million. A population flood the size of Adelaide has hit this country in 12 months. That's the cause of the housing and rental crisis, completely government-made. That is the cause of the housing crisis, completely government-made. If your rent has gone up, if you can't afford a house, if you can't even find a place to live, like the people in regional Queensland towns living in caravans, tents, in parks, in cars, under bridges. Just remember this, Albanese Labor government brought in 1 million people into this country in 1 year. With this bill, the Albanese government is claiming that it will build a few thousand houses and fix the problem. Who will build them? Supply chains for materials are still damaged due to government's COVID reaction and mismanagement that shattered supply chains, due to energy crisis that has been inflicted due to the government adopting UN 2050 net zero policy, driving up energy costs. Australia's tradies already build houses at the 4th fastest rate in the OECD. There's a question that has to be answered. Can we build even more houses more quickly? Trying to flood this industry already at capacity with huge amounts of taxpayer money is only going to make the funnel spill over. That will mean millions, potentially billions, of your taxes wasted. Let's not forget on the government's figures. They think they can build a house in Australia for $83,000. $83,000. What kind of house? They must be smoking some powerful stuff over in the Ministry for Housing. It doesn't matter how many billions this government wants to spend, we will never be able to build enough houses to catch up with the current rate of immigration. That is clear fact. It's a basic arithmetic. It's practical. Next, what do the Greens want us to use to build these houses? They won't let us use timber. There is a bill on the notice paper right now that the Greens introduced to end sustainable forest logging. To end sustainable forest logging. Timber is the only resource that's truly renewable. Yet the Greens have a bill saying we can't harvest the wood used in house frames, while claiming with this bill they want to build more houses. I guess that's okay. We can just build houses with steel frames, right? Not according to the Greens. The two main ingredients in making steel are coal and iron ore, Australia's two major mining commodities. The Greens want to end all mining in Australia so we'd have nothing with which to make the steel. So the Greens say they want to build more houses, virtue signalling, yet if Australia implemented their policies, we'd have no steel, no wood with which to build houses. And if our coal, iron ore and timber industries survive the Greens' blight, Prices of house timber and steel will be far higher thanks to the Greens' restrictions. The hypocrisy is so damn thick we could cut it with a knife. The Greens' policies are anti-human. One Nation policy includes many solutions to the government-created housing crisis, taken together holistically because the problem is many-factored. Among these, one major immediate solution to the housing crisis is that we must cut immigration immediately. Reduce our arrivals to zero net immigration. Zero net immigration, meaning only allow the same amount of people into the country as the number that leave. So departures cancel out arrivals. Zero net immigration. As Australians know, this country is already bursting at the seams. A cut to immigration to allow our housing stock, our essential services, our hospitals, our schools and other services time to catch up. If we don't stop immigration or cut immigration, life is going to get far, far worse for Australians, and it's already getting bad with the cost of living that is the #1 problem on people's minds. To continue this unprecedented immigration intake in the face of a housing and cost of living crisis is an act of criminal negligence against the Australian people. Minister, why is the government allowing 1 million students and permanent migrants into the country in just 12 months? How many houses does the government expect the million student and permanent migrant arrivals will need? How many houses does the government expect to build in 12 months? How many houses will the government's allocation of taxpayer funds build?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister.
There was in fact a question at the end there. Thank you, Senator Roberts. The government does not support the policy prescription that you've offered in relation to migration. And while you can hear echoes of the proposition that you've just put in relation to migration in some of the what's best described as circular comments of the Leader of the Opposition in relation to migration and housing, in fact, migration is an important part will be an important part, has been an important part of the housing industry in Australia since the Second World War. In fact, if you spend time on any building site in Australia, what you will find is migrants, permanent and temporary, mostly permanent, who in fact make up a very large part of the labour force, building homes, building apartment blocks, building shopping centres all over Australia. And the government's migration settings will be made over time and will be made in the national interest. I hear your argument with your colleagues down here in the Greens political party. The government has always made it very clear that where there are constructive suggestions from anyone on the crossbench, that we will work with people, senators and members across the parliament in the national interest, where there are sensible amendments proposed to reach agreement on legislation in its passage through this parliament. There is, of course, nothing like the disappointment of a crossbench senator who doesn't feel like they've got their way in terms of the process. But I've heard these complaints over the short time that I've been here from crossbench senators over time. And I just assure you and all of the crossbench senators that government's approach will be consistent, has been consistent in terms of this legislation, will be consistent in the future. Where there's opportunities for constructive discussion about government legislation, we'll engage in it.